This is a poem from my new-ish book. The name of the book is My Blazing World, and the name of the poem is Right to Choose. The title of the poem was going to be the title of the collection, but I changed it over time. Right to choose. Underfoot, I will throw on some schmutta, but under stress, I turn to whiskey or I whine or other medication. Lately, I prefer meditation. Make it all go away. Only the moment matters. Let these thoughts go. I invited someone to take over. I loved when they climbed my tree, bound my hair to my own low bough. Oh, that thumb. You choose, I begged. And they did make a salad, hand me a fork, and let me make my own way home in the dark. The white branches hung heavy at dusk. I came to the edge of his park. No kid played at that hour. Why else do we who choose children? Yes, we cradle, coax them through the night. You have to shush, not make a move. Make sure they don't die in their sleep. But the Grand Prix to focus your high beam on someone else, not yourself. Lay thee down under unbalanced boulder, waiting for the fault, dear Portia, in our winking stars. Portia, for those who might not guess, is a woman figure in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. She is the wife of Brutus, and Brutus is the receiver of the comment, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. And I wrote as an epigraph for this book, the fault, dear wife of Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. I'll say a couple of things about the book before I go to another poem. One is that which is typical for me, I have probably 4 or 5 epigraphs because I'm always inspired by so many figures in literature and in life. And another epigraph is to the world's first known author. Her name was Enheduanna, and she lived approximately 2250 to 2286 BC. And how we know this is there was this wonderful exhibit of findings from evidence that she existed and that she dictated or wrote on stones, on slates, and these 2 centuries before, 2.5 centuries before Christ. And she wrote to women goddess. She's a remarkable figure, and to think she's the world's first known author, and we're speaking of she. She wrote, I have given birth, O exalted lady, to this song for you. So that's another epigraph. And then one more piece of information for the book is that the title is My Blazing World. And this title was stolen or taken from another amazing woman figure named Margaret Cavendish, who lived, I think she lived in the 17th century, and she was known as Mad Madge to her to her own circles, or not supporters. She was ridiculed a lot. She was a poet, a playwright, somewhat of a feminine female activist, and a scientist. And she's been rediscovered quite a few times now since the feminist studies, I think in the late 20th century and certainly well into the current time. She's a well-known figure now in some circles, and she wrote a science fiction novel called The Blazing World. And so I took my title from her, My Blazing World. So I'm going to read a couple of other poems from this book. One, well, I think I'll do it this way. I started the book earlier. First, I started the book with a poem about a painting of the Virgin Mary in the Annunciation in the cloisters, this beautiful medieval museum in Manhattan, where I lived most of my adult life and where I was born. Now I don't live there, but, and I have two poems with this title, Imagine Birth, but I'm not going to read that because I'm going to read another one, which is called Rockaway Girl. My mother died just somewhat before this book came out. And it was such a trauma in some ways, even though she was quite old, that I needed to write about it. Of course, no one accepted poems about my dead mother and my grieving till somewhat later. This is Rockaway Girl, and Rockaway is also a place in Queens, formerly Brooklyn, called Far Rockaway. And Brooklyn's the trendiest place in the world now, but it's outdone Manhattan by far. But my mother and other people up until 15 years ago were embarrassed to say they came from there. So this is Rockaway Girl. Frigid March day, spring just around the bend. Mother's January, Dad's February at an end. Sky heavy, gray as milk. Sharp-edged snow chips slice my forehead. The wind fierce, fears light. Daylight savings begins tonight. Spring forward. She died, my mother, in another time zone. Not the one we enter now. How terrible to leave her back there in February. Spring will bloom without her. Oh, please come up and see my dogwoods, she'll say. My trees are simply gorgeous. A girl from Far Rockaway encountering blossoms her first time. I'll read about another kind of mother, very different. And then I have one more I think I'll go to from my other book that launched me into poetry, well, in a way, as an adult. This is called Sylvia Had No Starbucks. Keep in mind that when Starbucks came to the East Coast anyway, we didn't yet have the coffee house culture that other places like Europe had before. So this was not until the late 80s. And if you had children before that, you often had no place to go to meet and greet and hang out. You were stuck sometimes in this, terrible loneliness at home. Sylvia had no Starbucks. You don't think it would have made all the difference? She could have bundled those wailing toddlers into a pram, zipped them tight to their chins, promised steamed milk and nutmeg or kitty-size hot chocolate, instead of leaving those two cooling cups right by her trail to the oven. In the cheerful atrium out from that infamous freeze, she might have sat and read the paper. jotted a poem. She might have chatted with another mother. She could have been lulled, stretched her limbs, stopped chiseling her chilled statue, dared a laugh at the Minotaur, Daddy, or Ted, picked up a tidbit for later in bed, instead of ramming her throbbing head, her ish, ish, ish into the stove, sucking the sweet, hissy fumes as if gas were sleep and the hot words spilled down over the spotless floor. I guess I've written quite a bit about the children bring sorrow and joy. Not having a family is so hard. Having a family is so hard. I like to speak up for women's voices. I think I would, let's see, I plan to read, I'm just looking more. This is a sonnet, and it also has a woman in it, but she is a figure of a woman called Memory. And she is one of my muses. She is actually a sculpture in a park in Upper Manhattan called Strauss Park. It's right at an intersection of 106th Street and Broadway. It's a little triangle park, and it was named and dedicated by the family of two older people that went down with the Titanic. Their descendants lived on 106th Street, and there was this little triangle of land that became a beautiful garden and a statue cast, I believe, a bronze of this gorgeous reclining woman named Memory, who actually was a model who had a very sad life, and I wrote about her too. But this is called The Strausses' Return to Broadway. You look cold, Memory, frost on bronze, your fleshy arms made hard by first snow. Bare maples, ginkgos gaze stiff behind you, their trunks in icy sleeves so thin, God knows they freeze. Loving, frigid water streaming from their hair. Old pair who sailed with the Titanic, seaweed received them, limbs entwined. Never has death been lovelier. Winter brings violet, dusk, and gold. You've been thinking something here since 1915, your dreaming feet, your gown in chilly folds. Above your bowed head, love's branches quiver, as if summer, hidden silver, spoke. Well, I feel an obligation to read something about war. So maybe I'll substitute that for the poem I was going to read, Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know. I have several journeys going on, and one is I'd love to dive into the past, which in some ways was romantic, in some ways brutal. But I think I better read this because of what's going on in the world now. And sorry. No, oh, here it is. I thought it was at the end of my collection, but it's actually toward the beginning, which is where I write about many of the children-related poems. This is a kind of pantoum, and I hope I'll get to talk a little bit about my use and my non-use of form. And this has a run-on title, which I don't know if you can see, but it says Wars and Mothers, and Mothers and Wars, and Mothers and Wars, and Mothers and Wars, and Mothers and Wars, and it goes on. My mother died. Russia invaded Ukraine. One thing, nothing to do with the other. This was not the first invasion. Babies born, their eyes wide open. Mothers clutch their children close. New maniac is on the loose. Slate blue to black are baby's eyes. She couldn't swallow a drop of juice. The maniac is on the loose. She clenched her teeth against the spoon. No longer could she drink clear water. Her high, sharp bones, straggling hair, drooping lids, howling mouth, tribe and color, measure mercy, Mongol bones, tangled hair. Who to let in, who to keep out? Tribe or color, measure mercy. We too barred from every shore, who to let in, who to keep out. They stripped them, shot them down the pit. The other barred from every shore. Children's blood spills to the sea. Soldiers play catch with someone's baby, crying, "Mama," who can't answer. Full circle ghosts of Babi Yar. Soft-skinned babies close their eyes. No poem blocks the blood-cursed bullet. Mother died. The war broke out. Sorry to end on a down note.